Hello, hello. What is up, everyone? Hello, everybody in chat. Welcome. Welcome to the Off Label Podcast, your weekly dose of sanity in an insane world. Today, we revisit the Trump indictment as Alvin Bragg tries to sue Jim Jordan for wanting proof of Bragg's claims. Documents were leaked that destroys the government's narrative about the Ukraine-Russian war, and the FBI is now flagging words like based and red-pilled as racially motivated violent rhetoric. So that's fun. Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks gets attacked by her own followers by stating she doesn't want to be referred to as a birthing person based instead of a woman. And Gavin Newsome starts to campaign for Democrat policies in red states, kind of showing that he might be the next Democratic candidate. And we do have a special guest on tonight as well to discuss all of the Trump indictment. So we're going to do this first story. I think we're streaming on like all the channels right now. So those of you who are joining us on Freely Ashley, my channel, so it sounds weird to say it out loud, but those of you on my channel, if you want to go ahead and jump over to the Off Label Podcast channel to continue with us, and then we always do a Rumble exclusive at the end of the show. So what is up tonight, Drunken? How are you?
Had a very, very busy day. We had that little talk with Gothics, and then I had to run out and have some fun with some people that came from out of town. Then I had to run back here, get all this going, and I still have a talk after we're done here. So it's a day for me. But yeah. So this is going to be kind of fun for me. I've got caffeine and all types of goodies going right here in front of my face. But ladies and gentlemen, we do have a little bit of a special guest for you tonight. Now, when we're talking about this Trump indictment and the charges and everything like that, there's a lot of talk that goes around about the legality of it and the what this means and how this goes about. And a lot of people don't understand what they're talking about. I got a special one for you today. We actually have with us, let me bring him in, Robert, what is it, Gouveia?
Yeah, Gouveia. Good to see you guys.
Okay. What's up, man? Robert Gouveia, he's an actual lawyer from Arizona. I reached out to him because I know he's covered this and wanted to get his kind of, I guess, more expert legal advice than the rest of us. And to go over everything to make everybody out there aware of what this means for everybody involved and how these things should play out in a fair and legal just system. But go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
It's good to see you, Drunken. Good to see you and meet you freely, Ashley. Yeah, my name's Robert. I'm a criminal defense attorney. We have a live stream that we do every weekday on YouTube. It's called Watching the Watchers Live. And we cover police, prosecutors, and politicians. And for quite some time, we've been following along the Trump various investigations. He's got a ton of stuff going on. And so we've been following all of his civil complaints. We've been following many of his different criminal investigations. I have a lot more experience in his criminal investigations, or I would say, background in criminal law, because I used to run a law firm here in Arizona called the R&R Law Group. Just recently exited that law firm earlier this year to focus on more of what I'm calling, practicing law in the court of public opinion, which is really covering a lot of these cases and shining a spotlight down upon these cases. We have been covering the January 6th cases and a lot of other kind of public interest cases, but I think a lot of cases that maybe need a little bit more attention, a little bit more breaking down, because a lot of what we see in the media is just copy and paste stuff from one journalist to another, and it's just not really telling the full story. So we developed these big, deep mind maps, and we've been, zooming in and out on all of these various investigations. And of course, the New York investigation is massive, right? This is the one that actually has been filed, the one that's actually moving forward. And I think a lot of people are shocked that we are here. We've been speculating we were going to be here for a long time, but now we're here. They crossed the Rubicon, they crossed that line, and it's kind of a weak case, but there's a lot more to dig into and a lot more to come. I think that Trump has a long road ahead in terms of, battling back these various prosecutions, but it will be fun to watch as it happens and develop defenses, because I do think he's got good defenses for each and every one of them as well.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be diving into that a little bit here, but let's go ahead and kind of give a little recap of how we got here before we get into this. Now, of course, it is It is, and from my end, very, very political persecution, I guess would be the best word for that. But it is very dangerous that we are going after, for the first time, a sitting or former sitting president. These charges that have been brought up were because of the Stormy Daniels payoff. Of course, Stormy Daniels has denied multiple times that any of this happened. There was even a letter, and then later on, she's just like, well, no, I signed that under duress. Michael Cohen wrote a letter saying he paid off Stormy Daniels and never got reimbursed for it. And then all of a sudden, well, he is a perjurer. He's lied under oath several times, right, Robert?
Yeah, he definitely pleaded guilty. I think there were a couple counts in there. I think they were part of the same plea deal, but they were two different offenses and two different dates. There was some testimony to Congress that was problematic, and then there was testimony to Special Counsel Robert Mueller that were both problematic. And yeah, Cohen is not a very credible guy.
Not at all. And then again, he was supposed to be like, what, the special witness for all of this, right?
That was it's really hard to tell. Yeah, it's hard to tell because it's a grand jury proceeding. That's how Trump got indicted. So there's a couple different ways that anybody can get indicted. And even though we're talking about Trump, as crazy as this is, he's going to get indicted the same way anybody else is. There's nothing really special about the indictment process per se. It just happens to be a former president, which is historical. But the process is, in this case, it's done in secret. You can contrast that. Oftentimes we'll talk about, FBI special agents who will draft a big, long complaint. We'll look for a search warrant and an affidavit and all of that stuff. That's not what happened in this case. This case has been being prosecuted for years under the seal of grand jury. So nobody really knows what's going on. And it was supposedly dead. I mean, this case was looked into by a number of different entities, and many people declared it to be dead. Many people thought Alvin Bragg himself declared this to be dead. And then it was resurrected. And a lot of people in the media were calling it a zombie case because we all thought it was dead. And then it came back to life. And to your question, it really came back to life when Michael Cohen was brought back to testify again in front of the grand jury. And then there were some other timeline questions about who testified first and who testified right after him. And then there was a lot of rumors that the grand jury was proceeding, and then after Cohen testified that it was off. I'm sorry, Cohen testified and it was on, and then Cohen's former legal advisor Costello testified the following day, and then it seemed off again, and then it came back. So I think you're right. I think that the actual star witness was Michael Cohen, but a lot of people really can't put together why, because it feels like he was already a witness that had been considered a long time ago and was disposed of. The FEC looked at this, and different U.S. attorneys looked at this, and nobody concluded that he was credible enough for this to move forward. But now it's back.
Right.
Is that why like no other prosecutors like really pursued this in earnest, was just because of a bad witness, or were there other components to it as well?
Yeah, I think that a bad witness is a major part of this. And I mean bad as in bad. I mean, the evidence is just also not there. And a lot of the evidence relies upon Michael Cohen's statement. So, zooming out a little bit, Michael Cohen was Trump's lawyer for a long time and made all of these claims after the fact that is now sort of resurrecting this case that we're identifying. But if you look around Michael Cohen and you look at some of the documents that he sent during this same timeline. So in other words, Cohen said one thing, now he's saying something entirely different. But if you look back at the first set of things that Cohen talked about, there's a ton of evidence that supports that prior statement. So his original statement has evidence that supports it. This current statement, as far as we know, doesn't have evidence that supports it. So what I'm saying is that Michael Cohen has letters from his lawyer to other investigative bodies. So, for example, a big question about this particular crime is whether Trump made inappropriate payments and was cooking the books. Essentially, it's a bookkeeping crime, and if he did, then that might lead to, if he was spending campaign money on it, it might lead to federal crimes. If he wasn't spending campaign money on it, it would lead to New York crimes. And so there's all of these letters when the first time that this was being investigated from Michael Cohen to the FEC and to all of the other bodies that already investigated this, that confirm in writing that Trump is exonerated. Trump is far away from this. He's at an arm's length distance. And that evidence really hasn't changed as far as we know. When Michael Cohen was, fast forward, all of it was investigated and declined back then. Michael Cohen is brought forward today to this day, and he's now apparently talking about the same stuff. And our question is, what changed? What is new evidence that may have changed his previous statement? So he's either lying then or he's lying now. And we already know he's taken a guilty plea. So, I mean, that's just one part of this entire charade that is problematic. If you want to really zoom out, I mean, there's legal problems with this. There's also what's called the statute of limitations problem. This case is so old. It was originating back in 2015. And just technically, and I don't want to get too technical here, but you have to bring criminal charges within a certain period of time or else they expire. You just can't sit on them for years and years and years. We want evidence to be brought rapidly so that it doesn't go bad, so blood results don't go bad, so people don't sit in custody while they just wait around forever. And there is an expiration of this current crime that Trump has been charged with. The statute of limitations for felonies is 5 years. That means that any conduct that would have occurred before March, April now, 2018 would be precluded. They should have filed charges some time ago. So if you dive into the nuts and bolts of this thing as well, we're asking what is the law that causes these criminal charges as they stand facially right now without any other evidence at all, right? Before we even get into a trial, how do they survive when they are just facially insufficient based on the statute of limitations? And Alvin Bragg hasn't even really clarified that. So we're looking for other offenses that might extend the statute of limitations. We're looking for these bizarre arguments that haven't really been tried in a court of law, like whether or not Donald Trump and his presence outside of New York. So, for example, if Donald Trump is in the White House, does that toll the statute of limitations? Does that mean that 5-year window in which they can bring a crime is paused so that when he goes to DC, that time doesn't count against the 5-year clock, if that makes sense? So now we're starting to sort of aggregate the time when he's outside in DC or when he's outside in Florida in order to justify this type of case. And it's just nuts to do that. Most of these cases, a prosecutor would look at this and say, this is an extremely weak case. I think I agree with Trump's lawyers that if this were not Donald Trump as the defendant, they would have not charged this. So I agree with you. I think it feels completely political. And that's just, scratching the surface. And, I can filibuster all day on it, so I'll shut up for a minute.
Oh, no, you're good. But yeah, what is it? The statute of limitations on these charges individually of themselves is like, what, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. So for the lower level misdemeanors in New York, it's 2 years. The higher level felonies are 5 years. And the allegations of the bookkeeping charges, which if you pull up the indictment and the statement of facts, all of these bookkeeping crimes are from before that. And so how do you extend it beyond the statute of limitations? So if you zoom in on any of those,
it's all pretty much falsifying business records, though.
Every single charge is falsifying business records.
Okay,
yeah.
So all of them, yeah. But I mean, it's something like to the account of like he got billed, and that's a charge. He wrote it in his ledger like he's supposed to do for business, and that's a charge. He wrote the check, that's a charge. The check stub came back, that's a charge.
Exactly
Something
right.
to that effect.
Yeah, so zoom in on that a little bit so your audience can see just that first count. And if you go up to the first count, right there, you'll notice that it says an invoice, right? You see right there, it's on the second full paragraph, third sentence right there. Yeah, an invoice. Okay, so just think about this like any other transaction that you would do. You have somebody who does your yard or something, right? They send you an invoice. You record the invoice in your book and you cut a check to pay your landscaper, right? Or anything, or your lawyer, right? In this case. So Michael Cohen, you see here, drafts an invoice. If that's one count, okay, that's a felony count. Just the fact that Michael Cohen drafted an invoice dated February 14th. And what we'll do is we'll go down and you'll see in the second count. So Michael Cohen drafts an invoice. And if you scroll down into the second count just a little bit, you'll see there, it is a voucher Okay, so there's a basically he puts it into the ledger. So you see there's 2 ledger entries in February. I forgot there's actually 2 ledger entries. So it's a ledger entry right there. And if you scroll down to count 3, it's going to be another ledger entry, which is unusual. February, there's actually 2 ledger entries. The other months just have 1. But if you go into the 4th count, then you're going to see a check. So a check and a check stub, right? So if you follow that pattern, it's very simple. And that pattern is just repeated literally for every month of the year. Okay, so it's February all the way through December. It's like a recurring payment. Okay, it's like your Netflix subscription, right? Every month, every single month, Michael Cohen is sending an invoice, and then the invoice goes into the ledger. The ledger is paid by Trump. That's 3 felonies for one transaction, right? And they just multiply that times every month. And each one of those, as you see,
all 34.
All 34. There's a couple of weird months. Like there's one month where there's a late payment, but everything else is that's it. I mean, it's literally that. I think in July, like there's an April invoice that gets paid back in June or something like that. I went through it in fine detail, but it's nothing even significant. It's literal bookkeeping crimes, and it's 34 of them. And our question is, if you look at every one of them, they're going to say that's in violation of New York law, business law, section 175.10, committed as follows. And there's nothing in there that tells us what is extending the statute of limitations past that. So we've got a clock from that date on September 12th, 2017, the one count we're looking at right now, count 25, 5 years 25. After that, right?
Yeah, that was 2017.
Yeah. And so it's expired. That time has expired. Right. We are beyond that.
How can they even pursue this if the statute of limitations has run out on every single I don't even understand that aspect. Like, how can you even do this?
It's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. Nobody really knows yet. And one of the first things that we they're not scheduled for further hearings on this, I think, until December, if I remember that right. There's so many dates in my head. But I think that it's not for a long time. And Trump's lawyers, one of the first motions I expect them to file will be a statute of limitations motion. But I think what Alvin Bragg will do is it's like a stopwatch. If he says that Donald Trump was outside of the state of New York, either physically, that tolls it. So if he's in anywhere else, right, traveling overseas as president or any one of those things, he's going to make that argument. Or the other argument is that the entire presidency is told. He doesn't get any of that time against him. So 4 years would come off the clock, right? So 4 years now, if it's 6 years since 2017, you subtract the 4, it's only 2. And that then it would bring it back within the statute.
What would be the justification for that, for excluding that time?
The prosecutor would just make that argument, and the judge would say that's a reasonable argument, and I like it.
Okay. It's very strange.
Yeah. Let's not forget the fact that the judge's daughter worked with the Biden-Harris campaign as well.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that a major conflict of interest?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah, the fact that the daughter did is a little bit, she's further removed, but the bigger issue is that the judge himself made, I think, $35 of donations, which doesn't sound like a big number, but any number is kind of a big number. And those $35 of donations went to a bunch of Democratic causes. And I think one of them was something like Stop Republicans, and one of them was Joe Biden. So if you're thinking about, the judge literally donating to Donald Trump's political opponent and supporting Donald Trump's political opponent, and criminal charges against Donald Trump might support Donald Trump's political opponent, you think there's a pretty big conflict of interest there. So we'll see what Trump's lawyers do, or whether they file anything about that or make an issue of it. But certainly, yeah, people are raising questions. And then, the daughter, to make things look worse, was actively working for Kamala Harris and other big Democrats. And, I think listed on her website, her daughter's website, she's a political consultant. That, that expertise and that in her resume, basically.
Yeah.
So it feels
yeah.
biased.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's very
At least-
biased.
Yeah.
At least one person from Ashley's channel knows who you are.
What's up, Chanel? Good to see you.
But yeah,
That's awesome.
to me, this whole thing, it's just really insane, especially seeing as how, and I do want to go into the statement of facts here, because this is how everything's supposed to be tied together. He's saying repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from voting in the public during the 2016 presidential election. However, nowhere in here does he actually say what the other crime is that this is supposed to be covering up. I mean, this whole thing was about him paying off Stormy Daniels, so the information didn't come out. So what's this whole thing supposed to be covering up other than that?
That's exactly what we're looking for. So we're trying to identify, okay, what code? What code is that? What crime is that? There's a sentence there that says, okay, conceal information from the voting public. Oh,
Right.
okay, but that doesn't necessarily make it a crime. People conceal information from the public all the time. They just don't tell them stuff. So if you're alleging it's a crime, and that justifies these charges, so they're saying this was a bookkeeping crime that was done in order to do something else, right? It wasn't just a standard bookkeeping crime. It wasn't just we're just going to cook the books so I can maybe save some taxes or something, right? Or just make some minor things around I'm not going to pay that guy or whatever it is, right? It's not something more minor like that. And the actual New York Code provides some rules about what the penalties are for those things. This is a little bit different because they're saying that the actual act of concealing those records was done to do a bigger crime. And in this crime, it was some sort of an election cover-up. And the question, of course, is if you can identify what that second bigger crime is, the theory is that you could use that to extend the statute of limitations in some way, or turn it into a federal crime, or find some other aspect in the code that will justify the extension of the statute. But you got to identify that. You just can't.
Right.
Just like they're identifying section 175.10 as being the falsification of a business record, there's got to be something else there, to latch onto. It can't just be Alvin Bragg feeling like Donald Trump did a no-no. There's got to be a number there.
Right. And I do want to point this out from the Joseph Santos. The DA also said charge does not require that another crime be named. The charge is based on intent, which Bragg has to prove in court. He doesn't have to prove the crime, just the intent. No, I mean, it's the Fifth Amendment that says you have the right to face your accuser and to have, what you are being charged of brought up. Isn't there something in there? I may not be the Fifth, but I know there's something in there for that, to where you actually have to know what you're being accused of, and you have the right to face the accuser for all of that. So there is to provide that.
Yeah, there is something called the Confrontation Clause in the Constitution, and you do have the right to confront your accuser, people who are making the allegations against you. So I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with what Alvin Bragg, that comment may have been right. I'm not sure what Alvin Bragg was specifically talking about or getting at there, but he's going to have to overcome the hurdle, I think, of even this being facially survivable because of the statute of limitations issue. And if you read the statement of facts, there's some evidence in there about the thing that throws me off in the statement of facts is there's a lot of talk about another transaction that is not the Stormy Daniels transaction, which is a transaction about another woman, which her name was, gosh, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I remember that too.
McDougal
found
or something like that. Yeah, here I have it. Yeah, it's McDougal, Karen McDougal. And she was also paid in a relationship with this David Pecker guy. And so I was wondering, yeah, David Pecker. I know that's his name. I know. I didn't make it up.
Sorry, I'm childish. I know.
and so the other question was sort of whether Alvin Bragg is going to try to connect these two cases in some way, because the statement of fact. So something's not adding up here, and this may mean there's another indictment, a secondary indictment or something else happening, because the statement of facts talks a lot about Karen McDougal. And there are no charges in the original indictment that reference Karen McDougal at all. In fact, it's all Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen was the person who was orchestrating the payment to Stormy Daniels. There's some question about whether David Pecker, who was the former CEO of AMI, National Enquirer, that organization, it seemed like he was facilitating the agreement with McDougal. So almost Cohen was working with Stormy, Pecker was working with McDougal, and the statement of facts talk about both of them, but the indictment only talks about Cohen.
Right. And of course, the Karen McDougal, I think the Karen or Carol, what was it again? I'm sorry.
I think it's Karen.
Karen, yeah. She was the one, of course, as you can see here, I just started kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the thing. You can do anything. That's where the whole grab them by the thing started.
Yeah.
And now apparently she's coming back into the picture of all this too, which is weird.
Well, he said that to Billy Bush in a recorded conversation that was supposed to, he thought was private, but I mean, it's a gross statement anyway, but it doesn't mean what people think it means, but it's just very well, but yeah.
Nah, he was just saying when you're rich, they let you do it.
He was remarking on like gold diggers, essentially, just in a very vulgar way. Which, I mean, dudes will be dudes and very vulgarly with one another. But this whole thing is very strange, and I did want to ask, like, so this next hearing is set for December 4th, right? Is that a typical time frame, especially for like this like high profile case? It just seems like it's so far.
So I'm not a practitioner in New York. I don't know what their general timeline is. It seems very far for me in Arizona. If we had a felony case like this, it wouldn't be set out, 8 months. That's definitely far. It certainly is also, this is the president. And I imagine there will be more activity between now and then. A lot of this will be done, with motions and filings. And so I don't actually remember what that specific date was. The judge may set a bunch of other status conferences in between now and then. So there will be, more activity on the case. But no, I mean, it is a complex case. It is the president. The judge is probably granting, additional time. I can't even imagine what the courthouse was like when they had to shut everything down and technically, just get him in and out of there. I can't even imagine what that was like. If I was an attorney, who had to show up to court that day, I probably was pretty upset about that. But it's a big production. It's historic, and it's also gonna, I think, conveniently be placed right in time, right around the next election when things want to really heat up, right when you can really kind of
January 14th
skewer Trump, drag this out into the election.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you feel all of these charges in a fair, just criminal system? How do you feel all of these charges are going to wind up in the courtroom as far as that goes from a legal standpoint?
So this case, I think, is actually very weak, unless there's something else coming that we haven't seen yet. I mean, we read through the statement of facts. We've seen other comparable cases. You can look at John Edwards cases, and John Edwards, you remember, he was a Democratic primary nominee. I think he was running with Obama back during that race. And he ran into a similar situation. There was a situation where he was paying off his mistress. He had a child with her, and that situation turned into criminal charges because of, money that was paid and all the things. He ended up going to trial, very difficult case to prove, and he won. He was, acquitted on that. And so I think that there's legally a lot of room for Trump to win this. I think, honestly, it shouldn't have even been brought. If you were in any other reasonable jurisdiction, I don't think a prosecutor would have brought these charges. I mean, just truthfully. So if this was in Texas or in Florida, I don't think this case would have ever been brought. But if you look at it, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, the Manhattan DA is Alvin Bragg, the New York Attorney General is Letitia James. They both literally ran for office on the basis of prosecuting Trump. We've got clips of them. We know that their offices were infested with people that just wanted to remove Trump. They went and specifically hired people who were working for free to remove Trump. I mean, it was an orchestrated endeavor. And I think that a lot of New York the constituency there, the people who are going to be on the grand juries, the people who are going to be on the jury panels, if the case does go to trial, I think that they'll convict him. And I think if the judge can thread the needle on this to keep this case survivable, he will. And I used to not always think that, but we've also been following the January 6 cases, and we've been watching what the judge will do to turn themselves, and the prosecutors turn themselves into pretzels in order to make these things move forward, even when their cases are extremely weak. So in a reasonable, rational court, I think that this case would be dismissed. I honestly don't think it would have ever even been brought. And I think it's reprehensible that it has been brought by partisan political prosecutors like Alvin Bragg and Letitia James. But that being said, I think it has been brought. And I think that unless, I still, unless there's something else that we're missing here, I still think that it is facially deficient. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was dismissed on a statute of limitations argument, unless there is a novel, groundbreaking new ruling that establishes new law that says that when you're out of state, this tolls the statute of limitations and all of these new things. But those may have already been decided, right? They may have already got the game plan out here, and they're just running the plays.
Okay. All right. So to me, it sounds like nobody should actually kind of be worried about this case. But do we have anything as far as like any knowledge of what Georgia wants to bring, or DC altogether, or is that still on the hush hush?
Yeah, those cases I think are actually bigger liabilities for Trump. I think this case, even a lot of people know this case involves payoffs to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, and they're not too concerned about that. You can look back to Bill Clinton or any one of these other political scandals that involve payoffs between politicians, and I don't think they carry a lot of weight with them. The fact that this is also legally pretty weak, I think, makes this case weak. But the others, I think there's more to them in terms of potential problems for Trump. The Georgia case is involving the phone call that he made after the election, where he was asking them to go find some things. He had questions about what happened then and made a phone call. And there was also some presentations that I believe Rudy Giuliani and other people were giving to their local legislatures. If you remember that, they were saying, hey, we've got demonstrable evidence of things. And Fannie Willis is the prosecutor who is leading that charge. And she's been presenting evidence. And we heard from her, actually, there was the grand juror who I believe was Emily Kors was her name. A little bit of a strange woman. She told us that there's a bunch of indictments coming. And they actually did release a partial summary of what happened in the grand jury proceedings. And we were reading through it, and we were trying to tease out, there was, I think, 6 or 7 blank pages in the full document. And we were trying to see, all right, what's supposed to be in there that was redacted out. And the grand jury foreperson, Emily Kors, I think was her last name, said there are indictments coming. She didn't say whether it was coming for Trump, but she certainly kind of hinted that maybe it was. And I think I probably would suspect there will be another one. I sort of feel like they set up some dominoes to knock them down. I think we'll see New York. I think we'll see Georgia next. Georgia meets again in May, I think, for another grand jury. This was a special grand jury session, and then they're going to have their regular grand jury session coming up. And then after that, I think Trump's biggest threats are going to be from the special counsel for, there's 2 different branches of that investigation going on as well.
Okay. Well, you got anything else on this part, Ashley?
I mean, he did a wonderful job of answering most of the questions that I had lined up. I think, so how does the presidential bid work through all of this? Can he just run as normal throughout all of this, and just go, or is there any hangups with that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's uncharted territory, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, you imagine that it would be everything is normal, but these are criminal charges, and with criminal charges, judges can impose certain restrictions on you. So one concern that we had when it came to this actual filed case was whether this judge was going to put a gag order on Trump, because Trump, of course, talks a lot about cases. He's campaigning. If he talks about this case and he says this judge is something, or this case is whatever, or this prosecutor is this thing, what if the judge puts a gag order on him? Now you've got this real serious conflict between his right as a presidential candidate, somebody who's running for office, and the sanctity of the criminal trial. And the judge might say, I have precedent over your campaign, so you have to shut up about this. And then we have a free speech problem, which I imagine would implicate the Supreme Court. And what happens if there is a gag order and Trump violates the gag order and the judge says, now there's going to be contempt of court and you show up or I'm going to arrest you and put you in jail as a candidate. And Trump says, do it. And we just wait around, for this whole thing. And we have a major breakdown of the system, which is why these things don't happen, which is why you don't prosecute political opponents in this country. It's nuts. It's like dividing by zero. It's the dumbest thing ever. Or it could go regularly. Trump could just have, one indictment. They decide not to indict him on the others. That case gets dismissed. Trump moves forward. He gets warnings from special counsel or something, and he gets elected. Or he could get arrested, put in custody, and win the presidency theoretically from a jail cell, and then pardon himself. I would imagine, let himself out, and then fire the whole DOJ.
That would be awesome.
I think that'd be great. I'd be, it would be a story. It'd be a good story. That's for sure.
I mean, if that's the case, I'd vote for him just to say we had a convicted criminal sitting in the White House that pardoned himself and fired everybody.
Pardoned himself.
All right,
from jail.
We get that all the time. But whatever. I mean, this is all right. We're going to go through one little thing here before we start taking questions from you guys for Rob here. I do want to come across this. Now, I'm not too versed in this myself, but Republicans demand Manhattan DA Bragg turn over docs related to the Trump investigation, potential indictments. So the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Oversight and Administration Committees issued a letter to Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg on Monday, demanding testimony and documents related to the investigation and potential indictment of former President Donald Trump. The joint letter from the House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, and House Administration Committee Chairman Brian Steele is the first action by Republican House committees in response to Trump saying that he expects to be indicted this week after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy quickly announced he planned to use committees to probe the potential indictment and whether federal funding was involved. This kind of led into Alvin Bragg trying to sue Jim Jordan. There was a temporary restraining order that was, I think that was denied, was it not?
I believe it was. I think that there was a filing problem and Alvin Bragg didn't attach some certain documents and the judge said, correct that. And I don't know if he did that or what the actual status was, but yeah, so it was a recent filing and he's basically asking the court to stop Congress from investigating him. And it's going to be an interesting debate here. Jim Jordan is saying that we've got authority to come in here as Congress and investigate what you're doing. And Jordan's really using a lot of the same tools, a lot of the same legislative power that the January 6th Select Committee used to go do whatever they wanted. Congress is almost using now Jim Jordan. It feels like he copied and pasted the same thing from Liz Cheney, and he's using the same thing and shoving it right back down their mouths, which is enjoyable, but they don't like it, and now they're saying that this is an overstepping of Congress. But I think Jim Jordan, I actually don't like this. I wish Congress had a lot less power than they do, but they have a ton of power. And Jordan is using Congress to say that they're interfering with the current election. Donald Trump is running for president, right, for a current election, and prosecuting him might be a problem, and Congress might have some say in that. And there's also evidence that Alvin Bragg's office used federal funds from Congress to conduct this prosecution. And so certainly they've got jurisdiction there as well. And it's amazing to hear them talk about states' rights and state sovereignty now. All of a sudden, New York is saying, how can Congress possibly come into our state and legislate here? It's ridiculous. So Congress is, I think, going to go full steam ahead. But Congress sent a letter. Alvin said, get bent. Congress sent a subpoena to some other lawyer. And now, as a result of that subpoena, this was Mark Pomerantz who got that subpoena. Now, Alvin Bragg filed a lawsuit against Jim Jordan and Congress, which is nuts. And he's suing them to stop the subpoena from being enforced. And so we have this big match between these two people. And Congress normally wins, but our judiciary is certainly in a questionable state. I'll just leave it there. We'll see what they do
Yeah.
about it. But, Congress is Congress, and we've seen how much power they have.
Oh, of course. But yeah, that's as far as that goes. I don't know. Alvin Bragg there was talk about him leaking the actual indictment himself, and that is pretty illegal, is it not?
Yeah,
If everything was sealed, it was supposed to be unsealed when he arrived at court, and this came out before he arrived at court. I mean, that's kind of an issue too, is it not?
Yeah, I don't know what the timing of that was, but there were certainly questions about it. Yeah, grand jury proceedings are supposed to be buttoned up, extremely tight, extremely sealed. They're private, secretive hearings for that purpose. You want to protect everything that goes on in there. So this has been a repeated thing with Donald Trump throughout really all the media and every single case that we've talked about. It's very strange. The special counsel is continuously leaking. The Washington Post and the New York Times are getting their stories. We're always amazed. How do they know about this? And I think we were covering some article on our channel the other day where Washington Post, I think, confirmed with 8 sources familiar with the investigation. And I was like, what are you talking about? Normally it's like 1 source or 2 sources. They had 8 sources. I'm like, were they at happy hour together or something? What the heck is going on? This is supposed to be a secretive proceeding where this stuff is not leaking. But if it's Donald Trump, there's like this almost 2-way street. And they just are openly communicating as long as it's useful towards getting Trump.
Okay. Yeah. It all seems very much like a coordinated attack, really. Like that's all of this is it's too big of coincidences and the conflicts of interest and just the insane charges that are coming through. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, you should at least be able to, not you personally, generally right. You, but like people should be able to at least acknowledge that this is wrong and it's we're going after a political opponent specifically to try to take them out of the running. And to me, it's like, why are you so scared of this man winning again? That's always what I come back to is why is there this huge effort at every turn? How many billions of dollars have been wasted on investigations and proceedings and all of this to come up with essentially nothing.
I agree. I think it is a derangement syndrome, as they say. I really can't explain it. And we've seen this even come out in these prosecutions. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, she said that her soul, she feeds her soul with prosecuting Donald Trump. And I'm just thinking this is a little bit nuts. Because what you're doing is you're crossing a threshold that we do not come back from, because in order to win, once we've crossed that line, both sides have to play this game now. Republicans are going to have to start thinking this way, and it's mutually assured destruction when you start prosecuting your political opponents. And other foreign leaders are recognizing this too. If this was happening in any other country, and it does happen in other countries where they prosecute their political presidents, their opponents, we say, this is nuts. These people are crazy. What are they doing here? This is a third world country. At least we have democracy in America. And then we turn around here and we're prosecuting Donald Trump and people are screaming, chanting, like this is a great thing. You've got the president of Mexico who is mocking the thing, saying they're prosecuting him now. El Salvador was saying the same thing. And I think, other countries are recognizing that this is not what it once was. We're crossing into new territory here. It's uncharted territory, and I don't think it's good.
If El Salvador stands on a moral high ground above the United States, we have a problem.
I know. I know. They're making good progress down there. I think their murder rate's lower than New Orleans now. So it's they're really, really doing good work.
Oh, so they're coming up. Can we get Mexico involved in that too now?
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently Canada's going the opposite direction. But yeah, if y'all want to ask Rob any questions here, go ahead and put them in chat. I got a few of them. I'll be bringing them up as I look through the chat here. We got one from Heater Odox, says, can Bragg be countersued?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you can countersue for basically anything. I'm trying to think, offhand what a good reason would be, but yeah, maybe just interference with a congressional investigation. Well, I think the better thing to do would be to subpoena him. You just exercise the strong arm of Congress. You just say, all right, that's it. we're not playing around anymore. Now there's a congressional subpoena, which they have not done yet. And then they litigate that. And that, I think that's escalating it. What Bragg has done, Congress, I'm sure, is retooling right now. I think a countersuit could be perfectly appropriate. I know that the Judiciary Committee, I think, was going to be scheduling a little field trip to New York to go there and do a seminar about how much crime is in the streets. They were going to go walk around, talk to people, and sort of do an assessment about crime. And if Bragg interferes with that, or if he does anything, that might try to stonewall Congress, certainly I think they can countersue him. I'm just trying to think of something that would be fun and clever, but definitely they can if they wanted to play that game. But I think the bigger move is Congress. Congress is Congress, and it's the Judiciary Committee. And so just like the Select Committee people were quivering in their boots. They were demanding people come in and testify. They got a lot of compliance there. I think they should use that same leverage with this case.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to pull that, turnabout's fair play, an eye for an eye kind of situation. I know it's a dangerous road to go down, but I'm honestly, I'm of the belief, me and Ashley had a fight about that last time. And I'll touch on that after Rob's gone, but I'm on the belief actually of, if the only way they're going to learn is if you do to them what they do to you. You make them feel the pain that they give you. They learn, hey, what I did was bad. I need to back off. Let's drop. If you just let it keep rolling and you just keep turning the other cheek, they're just going to keep steamrolling it. And with something like this, I do feel like something has to be done to counteract that, and including the GOP trying to indict Biden now, which let's do it. They got a bigger claim on that.
What's frustrating is, like, if somebody has broken the law, if they have legitimately committed crimes and done something wrong, I don't care who they are, I do want them held accountable. But when you have these cases that are, dead in the water, so to speak, where, like you said, everybody was just moving along and going, there's nothing really here. And then all of a sudden it gets brought back up and all of a sudden it turns into all of this, then it's obviously, not that. It's obviously not legitimate. And now I feel like this is just going to go on and on and on for eternity. We're going to waste so much money and resources and people's time pursuing things that just nothing. And it's frustrating because it's like, I think Biden has done some things that would warrant this, but now after all of this, it's just going to look like the tit for tat. We're just doing this because you went after Trump, so now we're going after Biden. And I think that's where my frustration lies, is just like this is much bigger than just sticking it to the other side. And I think that tribalistic mentality has just completely ruined all integrity for not only our justice system, but our, systems of government. And, I don't know, like, I think overall, like, I guess I would ask, what would you think about all of that? Do you kind of view these systems as like corrupted by politics in a sense? Does it something that bothers you being in the profession that you're in?
It does bother me. And I think you hit on a lot of really astute points there. And I think that you're describing what is going to happen. I think that it will become more tit for tat, almost by necessity. If the Republicans don't play the same game that the Democrats are playing now, even if we don't like that idea, right? I don't like the idea of Congress and DAs and prosecutors becoming weaponized. I think that is a bad thing for freedom, honestly. I don't like a big, overarching, powerful government. I don't care who does it. But if the Democrats are going to do it, if they're going to play that game and they're going to use these tools in order to claw control of the country into their favor, the Republicans have to do it as well. Otherwise, they're going to be playing at a disadvantage. They're going to be playing with a smaller set of tools, and they'll all end up in prison, or they'll all end up as, vassals of the Democrats, essentially. Whoever captures the flag, whoever captures the court building, whoever captures the DA or the Attorney General's office or the presidency is going to start taking strong action and purging the rolls and replacing it with all of their own sycophants. So it becomes a big problem. I'm with you that I don't want presidents committing crimes. I don't want Donald Trump committing crimes. I don't want anybody committing crimes. and leading this country. I think we should have very high standards for all of that. But if we want to start prosecuting Trump, I think it should be the same standard that applies to everybody. You'd have to go out and prosecute Hillary. You'd have to go out and prosecute Biden. You'd have to go out and prosecute Obama. They all committed similar crimes, which is money crimes, FEC crimes, campaign fundraising crimes, all of it. But only one person gets singled out. It's Trump. The rest of them escape.
Obama committed murder. He literally bombed a United States citizen abroad trying to take out an enemy's bloodline, essentially. But he was a United States citizen. He murdered a United States citizen. Dick Cheney shot a guy in the face.
That's true.
So, I mean, let's go down that line, shall we?
That's not funny. That's not funny. That guy got shot in the face.
No, it's not. That part's not funny. It's just like
the story's funny.
I didn't expect to hear that.
Not.
Like,
no, I'm just kidding.
The delivery.
It's a funny. Look, I agree. I think you could indict a ham sandwich. You know, I often would joke with people that you commit a crime driving home from work basically every day. You know, you break the law somehow. You make a wide right turn, you stop in the median, you're following too close, whatever. If a cop
don't turn on that blinker.
Exactly. You don't turn on the blinker, any one of those things. If you're driving home from work at 5 o'clock, you're not going to get stopped. But if you're driving home from a bar at 2 a.m., you do the same conduct 2 different times, one you get arrested for. So they can just identify, ways to make these things hurt. And with Donald Trump, there has been an orchestrated set of lawsuits and lawfare brought down to bear upon him for a long time. And we just uncovered that in one of his other civil cases where he is being sued by this woman called E. Jean Carroll for defamation. Actually 2 lawsuits, one for the R word, the other for defamation. These cases are ancient, I think over 20 years old. And we just learned in a recent disclosure, trial is scheduled for April 24th. So Trump has another civil trial scheduled. Not next week, but the following. And we just learned that entire lawsuit was being backed by a billionaire called Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn. So what we're seeing is millions of dollars being funneled around to different litigants. In this case, it's one woman from 20 years ago who, I don't know how well she is, who was coerced, essentially, in my opinion, to bring this lawsuit because of a bunch of Trump haters, in particular, one guy called George Conway, encouraged her to file this lawsuit. This lawsuit has been dogging Trump for years now because they know that they can just keep hitting him. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, litigate. And many of these claims, every one of the claims that we've covered has been lacking massively, but that's not the point. The point is, it's not even about the underlying offense, which is what is so nefarious about this. So this woman was claiming that Trump assaulted her in a in a changing room at an old department store back in the 90s. She made the claim against Donald Trump, said he did this to me. That's not what that's not what this current disclosure is about. Trump responded to her and said she's a liar, and now she sues him for defamation on top of that. Right? So it's about Trump's response. It's not even about the real thing. So they're baiting him now. And then she files a defamation claim. And who can prove a defamation claim? This case is, it's 2023 now. This case is 20 something years old and it's still going to trial. So it's just been going on and on and on. And they know it's costing him hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. And it's in the news every week. We get a new headline. Trump's this claim. And it's a full-on onslaught. And the media loves it. They just take it, copy and paste, write articles about it, and get the clicks.
You are going to be covering that, correct?
We're covering all of them. Yeah, we've got a whole mind map going. Yeah, we're getting into all of it.
Cool.
There's a lot of it. There's going to be a lot.
Hey, Rich, can you drop a link to Robert's channel in my chat so that everybody can go and make sure to find him and subscribe to his channel so we can all follow along with you on that one.
We'd love to have you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. I've loved talking with you. It's you explain things very well, very easy to understand. I like it. Legal system is very complex. I'm sure a lot of people can agree with me on that. Things just get so convoluted, and I personally get sick of the second, third, fourth hand information by all of these journalists, and you can't really trust anybody. So it's helpful to have somebody who knows everything really really thoroughly.
I want to hit a few more here. Laura brings up a good point here. If it's bookkeeping law violations, then wouldn't it be Trump's bookkeepers violations and not Trump per se?
Yeah, it's a great question. And certainly Trump will make an argument like that. He'll try to distance himself from any of these things. He'll say, and it's my bookkeeper, my accountant, my financial advisor, my CPA. I'm many layers removed. He's also saying it's my lawyer. He's saying actually Trump's claim in this entire ordeal is that he knew nothing about Stormy Daniels. He didn't facilitate any of this at all, is his claim. And Cohen is saying, yes, that's not true. It's the opposite of that. So if you actually zoom in on the statute and you read section 175.10, it'll say that you caused any of the things to happen, right? So you kind of follow it up the chain. If they're alleging that Trump is the prime mover, he's the person he knocked the first domino over, and it's going down the chain. So everything goes back up to him. Bookkeeping, CPA, even lawyer, right? Even Michael Cohen. If you notice in many of those counts, Michael Cohen drafted the invoice. There wasn't even a bookkeeper involved. Michael Cohen sending an invoice to Trump, just the receipt of the invoice, was a felony because they're saying Trump caused the invoice to be written. So it's the prime mover essentially is responsible for everything.
And it's not like you have like retainer fees or anything that still need to be paid, right?
Right.
You know what's really crazy to me about that is like, I don't know, like people get charged with homicide for just being in the same room, like for not pulling the trigger or not doing anything. And so it's just crazy to me that they're like, we're gonna ignore this guy who's obviously involved on some level. Just go straight at like it. I mean, obviously there's the element of he's their witness. So I'm sure, they're just like, oh yeah, we're going to just leave you alone. And, if you do this, but I don't know, it's just very strange. The whole thing is just a big facade, really.
It is strange. You're not alone in that. I mean, even a lot of left-leaning lawyers who really despise Donald Trump are still scratching their heads about this. They're wondering what else is coming. And I think they're concerned because if they're leading with this case out of all of the cases, and this one's deflating, this one's not a success, it might take the wind out of the other cases. So, they want a series of successes so they can say guilty, criminal, guilty, criminal, guilty, criminal. And the other cases, in my opinion, are much stronger than this case. And they're starting with this case, and it might, let all the air out of the room.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, we got this one right here. This is an actually good question. It says the Russian floof cat. How would a jury be decided, though? There's no possible way for an unbiased jury to even try this case, especially coming out of New York. I got a friend from New York that's down here. That's why I actually was rushing around all day. You're talking about a whole bunch of people who really hate Trump because they're told to hate Trump, but they don't know anything about this, So if you're pulling from that kind of situation, how can that be unbiased in any way?
I think it's basically impossible, honestly. They'll try to work around this. I mean, we've seen and we've covered many other cases like this. We've covered Derek Chauvin. We've covered the Ghislaine Maxwell case with, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. And these are massively high profile cases. And we've long suspected that, there's no way you could get even unbiased jurors in those cases. Derek Chauvin, you remember the George Floyd saga and just how massive that media was everywhere. Everybody had an opinion on that. They still got a jury seated, they still got him in there and they got him seated and they very narrowly tailored it. I mean, the judge asks a bunch of questions and they don't keep it necessarily about all knowledge. They keep it about, did you watch the video particularly? Did you see the stuff about this case in detail? So in other words, translating that to Trump, you might know about Donald Trump. You might know he was the president. You might have an opinion about him. You might know all these things. But do you know specifically about this case? Do you know specifically about Michael Cohen? Did you ever hear about Michael Cohen? No? You ever hear about Stormy Daniels? No. You know about her loosely? Okay, but enough? Not okay. So all of these little variables, like all these little knobs, you know about this? No, this, no, this, no. And they say, great. Can you set aside your opinions about Donald Trump and be fair and impartial? And the jurors go, yes, I can. Sure. Love to. I'd be happy to. Put me on the jury. And they shake their heads. And the judge says, great. That's great. And the defense counsel is screaming over there at the sides. What the heck, judge? And he says, he said he could be fair and impartial. I don't know what to tell you. And they'll do that in this case. You know, they're going to try to make this like every other criminal case that they've ever seen. And they're just going to say, yeah, but they didn't know about this, and they didn't know about Stormy, and they didn't know about these specifics. So it's fair. And I think they'll do that as far as they can. And we'll see what the judges do.
I mean, didn't they kind of do that with a Kyle Rittenhouse case, I believe, where the BLM activist was actually on the jury? Either that or it was Derek Chauvin.
That was Chauvin. Yeah.
Okay, that was Chauvin.
That was Chauvin. Yeah. Chauvin had one juror who was on a podcast with a shirt on that said, "Get your knee off our neck." And he was on the jury for Derek Chauvin, which is a case about a knee on a neck, right? And he was in the aftermath out there advocating, as he's free to do. But when he was on the jury, he said that, you know, there's a very detailed jury questionnaire form that they have to fill out. And they say, these are my disclosures. And one of the questions was, did you ever appear on one of these things? He said no. And he was still on the jury. Chauvin still got convicted, and there was still no recourse for that. So the judge said it was, basically harmless error. It was inconsequential, and the conviction still stood. So it's, there's a lot of room on this. You want a fair and impartial jury. That definition is fluid.
That's very disappointing too. Like, what, I mean, is there recourse if they found out a jury member had lied in their initial? I've never been on a jury. I've never got called to jury duty, so I don't really know what the process is exactly. But I'm just wondering what would be any repercussions to that individual for lying about, a given case or the knowledge of that case.
Yeah, so it really depends on the circumstances of what the breach was. But, in that case, they deemed it to be minimal error. And so the verdict stood. One of the repercussions would be if there was a very egregious violation, like let's say, for example, in the jury room where they're deliberating, one juror, attacks another juror, coerces another juror, like there's corruption within the courtroom, that would render a verdict completely invalid. But there's other situations where in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, right, this is a case involving some very serious allegations, underage people. And there was one juror on that panel who, after she was convicted, revealed to the media that he had also been the victim of abuse as an underage person. That was not disclosed when he was going through jury questioning at all. And he also communicated that fact in the jury room. Okay, so the defense said, anybody here going to be on the jury panel that is, might have a bias about this type of case? Obviously, if you're the victim of a crime, you're going to have a problem with it, you would imagine, right? You'd feel a way about somebody who's being charged with those things. Same concept with DUIs, right? Every DUI trial, anybody here been impacted by a DUI? Anybody lose a family member by a DUI? Okay, you shouldn't be on the jury then, right? Because you're going to be a little bit too biased. Same situation here.
Well, I got to go.
But that juror in the Ghislaine Maxwell case was allowed on the panel. And that verdict also stayed. So, there's very limited situations where verdicts are overthrown. I mean, it's got to be pretty serious. It's got to be pretty major in order for them to do that, because the judge wants finality. They really want, for it to end.
Man, that just really black-pilled me towards the integrity of our criminal justice system, man.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Sorry to do that. Yeah,
that's real. No, I mean, I'd rather know what's going on, but no, it's just very discouraging, and I don't know. A lot of times, I just think we're too big as a country. Things have gotten out of hand.
things are wobbling for sure. They're definitely, there's something definitely happening right now.
Yeah,
and I think
for
it's
sure.
important to be aware of it and to be cognizant of these changes and to know what the government is doing, because we've all grown up on this idea of a fair and balanced justice system and a jury of our peers and due process and equal protection and all that stuff. And I will tell you this, that is not happening right now in this country at all. In some places, right, in some locales, we do have a lot of great people working in this justice system. But if you've been covering any of the cases that we've been following, you know, J6 cases, all of this Trump stuff, any of the double standards that exist with all of the FBI investigations, all of the criminal investigations involving the political, elections and stuff like that. I mean, it's madness out there. So I'm hopeful that more people wake up, because we need more people to wake up to demand a better system. So I'm grateful you guys brought me on.
Well, one more question here for you, Rob, and then we can let you go. Venticus Prime. I have a question, Rob. Why didn't you only say shine a spotlight and not shine a big, beautiful spotlight? Inquiring minds want to know.
Did I say that earlier today? Is that what he's talking about earlier? Probably just for brevity, V. No real reason. But the full saying is big, beautiful spotlight. That's what we shine down on our channel, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, he kind of yells that out as an outro for everything.
Yeah, that's my outro, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, just really, really want to thank you, man, for coming on and just, sharing this much of your time with us. We've kept you for quite a while, and it's been very informative, and you've been just a wonderful guest to have on. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Really, really good to meet you both. And see you.
You too, Rep. Definitely everybody go follow this man. He is covering a lot of good cases. There is a lot. Like I said, the fact that I know about how many informants now, Rob, in the January 6th?
Over 50 now and counting.
Yep. And we're still coming out about that. He's been covering this from day one, bringing a lot of good information about that. The Proud Boys case coming out. Y'all need to listen to this man, because he's covering everything as unbiased as possible, as far as when the story goes, after the fact. Yeah, he'll give you his thoughts on it, but definitely give this man a follow. Listen to him. He brings you some good information. And he also has a members section where he goes over a few little topics for you guys, just to kind of give you a heads up about what's there, what he may be looking for in the future as far as what he's going to cover. So definitely give this man a follow. Become a member if you feel like he's doing a good enough job and keeping you informed. And I guess we'll see y'all in that chat as well.
All right, guys. Well, I'll get out of here. I want to say before I go, I want to thank both of you and the chat for joining us today, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system. Guys, Ashley and Drunken Senpai, really enjoyed it. You guys have a beautiful stream, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Appreciate it, Rob.
Bye, guys.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
bye, chat. Love you guys. See ya.
All right. Go ahead. All right. So now that we got all that taken care of, I wanted to kind of bring him on to kind of highlight for you guys exactly what was going on with this whole thing, because he's been covering that nicely. He has a lot of information about that. And yeah, it's disturbing how far this has actually gone. What's even more disturbing is the Proud Boys case he's checking out. Y'all need to go back and watch some of the things he's been doing with that. But here's where we're going to cut the feeds. We're going to stay on the off-label YouTube and the off-label Rumble as well. I will give you both of them.
Yeah, the off-label YouTube should also be in the description on my channel, because I did actually go add that for once.
Yeah, we've been steadily growing. I've been watching the pace for that.
Yeah, it's doing good, and I really appreciate all of you guys who have gone and subscribed over there, and just watched the show. Like, we're just kind of starting out as just a casual thing, and it's been really fun and enjoyable, and it's fun to interact with you guys. Obviously, we didn't get too much on this one just because we had that guest, and I just want to listen to everything he had to say, and I wasn't watching chat very, very well. So, but we do really appreciate you guys for being here. Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and cut Ashley's channel and Voice of the People's channel as well. We will see you all on the off-label channel, whether it be YouTube or Rumble. and go ahead and take care of that.